Morning, y'alls. It's me again, Dr. E. This time here to help you out with Module 6. All right, Social Organization, Landscapes, and Beliefs. I love this stuff. But I do gotta, I don't know, I didn't get much sleep last night, so I'm kind of running on empty. So I might be a little out there today, and I'm sorry. But at least it might be entertaining for you all. Anyway, as I take a sip of coffee. So, um, my agenda for this video is that I want to go over some key things in Chapter 17, Archaeology and the Intangible. And I want to share some of my own personal experience in this realm. Right? I've spent a lot of time in doing and researching and analyzing a lot of this. It's kind of where I situate myself as an archaeologist, if you would. So, speaking. Then I want to try to share some stuff. So yeah, let's jump on into chapter 17 from Fagan and Durrani. So, this really focuses in on cognition, right? How we understand and construct ideas and their values. It's it touches on everything. One of the key words that we use here is cosmology, right? And this is an in-depth perspective that looks at the world and the universe and your place in it. Okay. And this might get a little, but it's really cool stuff. You got to understand that beliefs, all right, often intertwine the natural and the supernatural. Well, for those who don't know, the natural is what you can actually physically see, hear, touch. Okay. The supernatural is what you can't. Well, some people believe there is no supernatural. Okay, but that itself would be kind of a unique ideology. Not saying bad or wrong. All right, just recognizing that as a unique position. Now, we know that about 34,000 years ago, that modern humans, essentially Homo sapiens sapiens, started doing some. Well, we see evidence in the archaeological record, doing some interesting things. We start getting these, cave art, rock paintings that have meaning, value. The trick is, what is that meaning and value? What and why, right? But we can see some interesting patterns. About 10,000 years ago, we start getting this kind of like multi-layered cosmos structure, very symbolic. All right. And we tend to have like primordial origins, and then we have the heavens, which are distinctly a supernatural thing, right? And an underworld, right? And often these things are aligned in a vertical axis. So you have heaven at the top, right? the real world, if you would, the lived world, and then underneath that you have the underworld. And that's pretty simplistic, right? And simplistic is not a judgment. I'm just saying in terms of the structure, it started pretty basic, but then we start elaborating, right? Start getting really unique symbology of trees that, or often trees, it's pretty common pattern seen, that kind of connects all those three key areas, three layers, in a vertical axis, right? So they're all connected, right? They're not just layered, but they are connected on a vertical axis, right? Yeah, and we start getting concepts of gods, goddesses, deities, supernatural beings, supernatural medium, like how to translate that. Yeah, they're the supernatural, what you can't see. You may experience it, but it's not tangible. Okay, so that actually gets right back to the title of this: intangible. So this whole vertical axis, we often refer to as the axis mundi, right? The axis of the world. Yeah, and there's often a continuum where we have this vertical axis with layers of existence, reality, but we also have things like seasons. And we start getting these kind of cyclical patterns that, you're born, you grow, you die, you're born again, right? Not in terms of reincarnation, but just in terms of like the environment, right? Rain and fertility comes in the spring, and then you're growing in the summer, and then comes fall, and everything dies, right? And whoop, go through winter, and we're back to spring again, right? This seasonal round is often what it's called. And yeah, in the kind of the human cognition, right, we have kind of internal and external landscapes that are associated with all of that. So, internally, you may be, going through rites of passage. Okay, and that's all about shifting your social status and role and acquiring a new one, and it mirrors that same round, circular rotation. Yeah, we also start getting unique individuals, specialists. They may have some natural, innate ability that people recognize. I have issue with calling them shamans. Shamans are actually a pretty specific thing from Siberia, and they've just used that word for all sorts of different groups all over the world for particular folks that have unique special abilities. So I prefer to actually call such people practitioners. Right? They do the stuff. Okay, they have the means and skills to engage the supernatural, derive insight from it, possibly manipulate it. It's a really really cool thing. Yeah, I don't want to sound all artsy fartsy about that, but like recognizing that you have these specialists, right, that are recognized by the community as having these unique abilities. Now that says a whole lot. Okay, that social recognition, they're creating a social space for that to exist, right? And that's a huge shift. When we start seeing state type well, pre-industrial state type societies, you might have, start seeing religious elites, whole classes of priests in a hierarchical fashion. Look at the Roman Catholic Church today. Right, got a pope, and then imagine a triangle underneath of all the archbishops and yada yada. That can only exist if people make space for it, right? And that's a reflection of their values and beliefs surrounding it. Okay. That should help. Kind of understanding, cognitive archaeology, trying to understand ideology, cosmology, beliefs, values. It's really, really fascinating stuff. I wish I could sit here and, go off the deep end. Well, I might here in a little bit. Just hold on. Also got with cognitive archaeology, a lot of iconography. This is the analysis of symbols. All right, we use symbols. Well, actually, let me define symbol. A symbol is anything that has social meaning. Okay, my coffee cup is a perfect example. This is a symbol. All right, it's actually symbols upon symbols. Like the individual letters have social meaning. All right, we put them together and create words. Then what the words say themselves lends insight into social values regarding this. Like we even have on the other side a stormtrooper going pew pew. Why does that make sense to us? Why might we find that funny? We find it funny because we have certain understandings about certain symbols, right? And those are all culturally defined. Okay. You can analyze, rock art, rock paintings, classic, Mayan stela, and all these symbols. Our entire world is surrounded by. Everyone in the world is surrounded by symbols. So. I might talk about a symbolic interpretation or a symbolic analysis of particular things, and it's invaluable, right? And we often, it can help lend us insight to develop context as well, all right? Why is this particular symbol used the way it is in this particular circumstance? Right? Do we see it used the same way in other circumstances? Is it used differently? To what ends? To what effect? What are the relationships that we can establish between these things? The symbols, the people, the structure, the object, just imagine how far you can go with that. I mean, it's a never ending, and that's probably one of the reasons I love it. Love it so much. The text talks on this. I actually want to focus in on this kind of the ethnographic analogy in rock art. It's a great example in the chapter, looking at the Kung San, or the San peoples. There's many different bands of them, but it's a great little history lesson, and it helps show the value of actually working with certain peoples that have insight into such practices. Right? In this case, rock art. Was it Bleak? If I remember right, he actually got a few San prisoners, right, as informants. Talk about unethical, but that was old archaeology. We got to be a little forgiving. But he was able to have these people directly explain what certain symbols were in the paintings because they had been raised with them. They had done those practices. Right? That's awesome. So now I'm going to go really off the deep end. Okay, I'm going to share some of my personal experience in research because I do ethnoarchaeology. It's kind of one of my things. As I've said before, I work extensively in West Africa, particularly Mali, and I work with a particular group there called the Malinke. And they were the last colonial holdouts, the last group in Mali to be colonized by the French. To this day, they have very strong feelings about that. Very strong. But when I was there, I started as a Peace Corps volunteer, and I'd, go walk about out in the boonies, out in the bush, and I'd find interesting things. Some of them really old. I found a cave site that's 10 to 20,000 years old, and it showed really discrete habitation through the years, right? So we got a longitudinal habitation at this site. It had been used many, many, many times by prehistoric folk and historic folk, and are even still used to this day. So, while these didn't have paintings, we would often find strange things that I'm like, what the what? What is this? And I happen to have one here with me. So, bear with me. This. Okay, you're like, oh wow, a red bundle. Well, it's what's in there that's important. Let me open her up. This is a power object. Try to get it up there so you can see. And yeah, that's a whole lot of funky nastiness. What appears to be black is blood, right? That's old, dried blood, because this receives sacrifices. Now, we would find in some of these cave sites stuff nearly identical to this, right? This is modern. It's not ancient, right? It was actually started to be made in the 1930s. Okay, and I know its creator, his son, was one of my key consultants in my research. But I was finding stuff like this, but didn't understand what it meant. Right? Like, what is this funky thing? Right? I'm not trying to pass judgment or anything, but from an outsider's perspective, how do I make sense of this? Right? What's its social role? What's its context? Okay. So, in among the Malinke, you have these specialized practitioners, shamans, and they are folks that have natural abilities for the supernatural, and or are trained in manipulating the supernatural. That is often done through sacrifice, right? This may sound horrible, but I'm gonna kind of lift this up so you can see various parts to it. Here we have the main bundle, and if you can see, there's a bell. There's a bell. Oh, everything's backwards. There we go. There's the bell. All right. Like, what is this bell doing in here? What does that have to do with beliefs, right? Well, turns out, after I, through extensive research and training, I was actually trained as a traditional practitioner, right? That's how I went about learning what this stuff is, because a lot of it actually involves wildlife, right, which is my key thing. Turns out the bell is a sacred item, a sacred object. It creates sound pretty much out of nothing. and that sound travels. And that is a very symbolic thing for the Malinke, right? This notion of sound and how it is transmitted, all right? And it's then heard and processed. That's getting into cognition, right? So they see bells as having some special thing that reflects their understanding of sound symbols. Okay. We also have involved in this are various bundles that are actually now all kind of glued together with the old blood. Many of them. There's one here. There's one here. There's this band thing that you see going across. That's another thing. Let me set that down for a sec. Tilt the bowl. Goat horns, cowrie shells, all sorts of feathers from chickens, guinea fowl. Yeah, here's another little medicine bundle that's in it. Now this thing, you want to understand what it's used for, what its social role, its context is you use this to manipulate the supernatural. It is considered a living thing. In fact, you have to regularly feed it or it dies. Okay? Yeah. And from a local perspective, this guy, this power object, is a very dangerous thing. Right? Only certain individuals can even touch them or see them. All right, for an uninitiated, a novice to see this, right, or to even physically touch it is a huge no-no. Okay, you have to go through years of training to be able to do literally what I'm doing right now, holding it. Okay, taking it apart. Now, there's a whole social system in place for individuals to acquire that knowledge. You start as an apprentice to somebody, to a master. They're often called karamogoba, big teachers, where I work, and that's just fun to say, karamogoba. And so a karamogoba will have a kalende, a student, and they will work together for years, right? It often starting when they're, a teenager, and that relationship can go their entire lives, right? It's a very bonding thing, very intimate relationship. And then you go through various rites of passage along the way, and you end up, if you continue and you pass all your tests, if you would, you become a karamogoba, and then you acquire an apprentice, and they learn from you, right? And this process has been going on for millennia. Okay. And you can see it in the archaeological record, and you can see it in the ethnographic record today. And since they started recording this sort of stuff back in the mid 1800s, there was a French ethnographer, Marcel Griel, that did some of the initial work about spiritual beliefs, religion, cosmology in Mali. He didn't actually work with the group that I do. He worked with a different group, but you can look him up. You can look up the group that he worked with extensively. They're called the Dogon, and they're really unique. They only live in one place. Their language is unrelated to others in the region. They have a really unique origin story and cosmology. Really sets them apart from everyone else. And I kind of do that with the Malinke. So this power object is just kind of one example. Now, incidentally, the red cloth has meaning too. All right. This is the sacred red cloth, right? And that's actually a reference to the World War I veterans, conscripts from the colonies that were literally, you were conscripted and you were sent to the front. Go be cannon fodder. Go get killed. Die for our flag. Well, a lot of people died, and people back then, to kind of like hide wounds, the conscripts wore red undershirts, right? So like the t-shirt underneath their uniform was red. Because everyone saw this death, it became very associated with that red shirt. Okay, and veterans would bring them home, and they became incorporated into local beliefs. Right, that it's a. I've heard people describe it as like a shroud of death. Right, and it is very connected to the spirit world in West Africa, and particularly in Mali where I work. It's called the Dibi. And the Dibi is a dangerous place, and you have to be able to protect yourself from things that work in the Dibi, right, in the supernatural. So yeah, it's not from World War One, right? This is modern, but it is reflecting how that particular object, that thing, that red cloth, became incorporated into local belief systems. Amazing, right? It's I got some other examples here too. We would find porcupine quills in some of these historic sites and prehistoric sites. Like, are you eating a lot of porcupine? Well, yeah, but that's only part of the story. The quills are used in all sorts of traditional practices. In fact, perhaps one of the most common is you get a quill and a piece of fruit, usually like an orange, maybe a mango, and you can put a curse on someone. That's what they're used for. And you start poking the orange, and you recite the person's name aloud, and you say that you're sending pain their way. And you do it like 1,000 times, right? And it's supposed to hurt the other person. So the ethnographic research that I did lent insight into what all these porcupine quills we find scattered around, both prehistoric, historic, and contemporary sites. Really cool. There's also a tradition, there are sacred objects, not power objects, right? They're not considered to be alive. But they're used as ingredients often, and they're often highly symbolic, right? This is all about male and female. This is called a wotro. And you can see, let's see here if I can hold it still. There's a line that kind of like bisects this, and this is a seed, okay, from a tree. You see this line kind of wraps around, and one side's the male side, the other side's the female side, and it is symbolic of gender in a lot of ways. It's often used to represent social relationships with specific individuals, particularly across gender divisions, right? A binary division in this case. Now, if you carry one of these, right, it's supposed to, on one hand, increase your fertility or virility, make you receptive to the other gender, and vice versa. Okay, pretty cool. We find these in those old sites, right? Now, I got another one here, which actually several rocks, just rocks, interesting rocks, unique, special rocks. And these were given to me by various masters that I worked with, and actually from all over West Africa. This one's from Mali, this one's from Senegal, this one's from Northern Guinea. Now, practitioners, all right, big teachers, they might happen across these unique, distinct rocks, and they pick them up and they keep them. Now, they also pass them down, and in special cases they give them to other folks, like someone not necessarily from their family, but to some outsider. And it's a very powerful statement. This is something that think of it as like a family heirloom, and you're giving this to someone else. Now that establishes a relationship, all right, and it reflects trust. Yeah, but they're just unique looking rocks, often that stand out from their surroundings. This one, if I get it right, kind of looks like a toenail. Here, kind of see the raised part on it. There, you can see it. There it is. It kind of looks like a big toe. Well, he called it his toe rock, and he gave it to me. This one, and you can see the polish. This has been carried in someone's pocket for years and years and years and years. This is the oldest that I have. It's actually a crazy cool piece of agate. Okay, it also kind of looks like the Wutro. All right, you see the band. So there may be some symbolic relationship there as well. So, probably more than you ever wanted to hear, but I thought it was a great place to actually give you some, well, not hands-on, but first-person insights into ethnoarchaeology. Okay? Oh, maybe that might be helpful for, I don't know, your milestone, right? Yeah, so I'm going to stop here because I'm at 30 minutes. I got to stop. Any questions, any concerns, anything at all, let me know. I am at your service. Call, email, text, whatever you need, I'm there for you. Have a great one. I'll see you all in the discussion forums. Take care.